Polling question. Which method of fighting do you feel would be more effective? Hand-to-hand combat or guerrilla warfare? Take a second to think about that. If you chose B, you would be correct. Chapter 6, The Revolutionary War, 1776 to 1783. Section 3, The War Moves West and South. The essential question: how did fighting in the West and South affect the course of the Revolutionary War? So this war is going to move out to the west past the Appalachian Mountains, and fighting is going to move south, where most of the fighting has been in the New England area, that New York area. So now it's going to move south. Think about this question as we go through this section. The war moves west, and as the war moves west, Native Americans become involved in this war. To the right there you see Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant. He is one of those persons who becomes concerned as the British and these colonists begin fighting out in the western frontier. Now most Native Americans will side with the British. Some side with the Patriots, but most will side with the British. Think back to what we talked about before with the Proclamation of 1763. That was kind of a peace treaty with Native Americans that the colonists wouldn't move west into their territory. So they're going to side with the British in this war in hopes that if the British win, they'll be able to control that area out there in the west still. Again, British seem like less of a threat because they would allow them to stay in the west if they win this war. So most of them are going to side with them and fight alongside them to beat the colonists and the Patriots. Discussion question: with whom did most Native Americans side during the American Revolution? If you chose A, you would be correct. The British and Native Americans, and again, this is just a kind of repeat of what I just said, that they're going to ally themselves with the British and raid a lot of the American settlements to try and keep the colonists from moving out to the west. Now, there are already colonists that have moved out there, but they don't want any more moving in that direction. Henry Hamilton, British commander at Detroit, he's going to hire a lot of Native Americans to fight the Patriots, and he'll be called the hair buyer because he pays Native Americans for settler scalps as a way to prove that they killed Patriots, and they would bring those scalps back, and that would prove that instead of them just saying they killed one of the Patriots and then him having to pay them, he would make them scalp them first. Not a pleasant thought. George Rogers Clark, see his picture there to the right, goes out to the west to stop the British and the Native Americans in those areas and to control that area. He's going to ask Governor Patrick Henry to give him some troops so they can march out to Kaskaskia and attack the forts out there. He will be successful in taking Kaskaskia almost with no exchange of gunfire from the British people. So basically walks in there and gets them to surrender, and even convinces some of the Native Americans to join the Patriot side and stop fighting for the British. He's also going to fight at Vincennes and lose it to the British. Clark will be just devastated by that, and he'll go back and vow to get it back from Hamilton. He'll get 170 men. They'll walk 200 miles through freezing floodwaters. You can see that in the picture, and they'll fight Hamilton. And well, he does a really cool things. He kind of tricks them, Hamilton, and making Hamilton think that they have more troops than they actually do, which is a tactic that Washington also uses during the war to trick the British. And after he threatens some of Hamilton's Native American allies, Hamilton will surrender Vincennes back to Clark. Big victory for George Rogers Clark. He becomes known as the conqueror of the Old Northwest because of what he does at Vincennes. Glory at sea. Battles raged on at sea. Remember, the Americans do not have a navy, so they'll hire these privateers to fight the British forces, basically loading those merchant ships with guns and cannons, and they'll be the ones that go out and fight the British. The British have set up a blockade basically along the Atlantic so that supplies can't get into the Continental Army, and they also can't leave the colonies because the British will be blockading the oceans and all those ports in New York, Philadelphia, and Boston, not allowing the troops to get out. Continental Congress will build 13 warships, only 2 of which are actually made, and they're immediately captured by the British. So again, the American Navy, very weak, does not do a very good job of fighting the British, which is one of the reasons they're going to have to call the French in. The French have a navy that actually will stand up against the British. Getting crews for the ships was easy because it was very profitable. If you could take those British ships, you could force them to surrender. You could get on there and grab their supplies. It became very profitable, and they might have gotten money also from the Continental Congress for fighting the British. Discussion question: of the 13 American warships built to fight the British, how many actually made it to sea? A1, B2, C5, D10. If you answered B, you would be correct. John Paul Jones, another one of those privateers that goes out to fight the British and has a famous battle against the British. Now this battle is going to take place over in England. The Bonham Richard versus the Serapis, and it's a major battle between those two forces, and they'll fight for hours, destroying each other's boats so they're almost sinking. John Paul Jones' boat is almost at the point that they need to surrender, and he'll call out those famous words that I've not yet begun to fight, and he'll just keep fighting until eventually the Serapis gives up. In the end, the Serapis captain will surrender. I think John Paul Jones sails his boat, the Bonham Richard, back to port, and it sinks when it gets back to port. So both ships were badly damaged in that fight, but he is recognized as a war hero for standing up to British at sea. Struggles in the South. The British hoped that a campaign in the South would help win the war, move those efforts from New York, New Jersey, all those places, and move down south where there's more loyalists, and hope to gain the South. Again, that would be like their second plan to win this Revolutionary War. Push the fighting to the south, control that area, and again, the colonists will eventually give up. Now, the Americans crushed the Loyalists at the Battle of Moores Creek. Not a very big battle, but a big victory for the Patriots, and they're able to crush some Loyalists and British forces at that Battle of Moores Creek. A good victory for them, and helps raise the spirits of the Patriots, thinking they can, win battles against the British anywhere. All right, so the British saw they were no closer to victory, so they moved the war to the south. Now at this point, it's 1778. This war's been going on for 2 years. The British know they're losing control of the colonies. I mean, they've been fighting this for 2 years. Obviously, the colonists mean business. This independence thing, they really want to be independent from England. England's really starting to think at this point things aren't looking good for them, because they're still fighting after 2 years to get their independence. They thought this was going to be over in a couple months, and that's not the case. There are more loyalists in the South, and the British are really hoping that'll be good for their side. At least that's what they think initially when they begin this campaign in the South. General Henry Clinton is going to send 3,500 troops from New York to Savannah, Georgia, to control the areas in the South. British occupied and the coastal cities and overran most of the state. Clinton himself headed south of a large army to attack in Charleston, which is going to be a big loss for the Patriots, probably the biggest loss in this war. The British will capture more than 3,000 Patriots and a lot of ammunition and equipment, and they're only going to lose about 250 men in this war in Charleston. And after that, you're going to have Cornwallis come down there, and he'll be in control of the South. He's got 8,300 British troops in the South, and they're hoping to control it by setting up forts in Yorktown, Virginia. Remember that name, Yorktown, as we go through this.